Yeah. So I have absolutely no idea what we're going to talk about today.
You know what's ironic and also terrible is that I was just going to make the same confession.
Yeah.
Because I had a single idea, and that's probably going to get burned very quickly.
I think it was a good idea. Oh, shit. I do need you to come down just a little bit more.
Bloody hell. I'm going to hit the master mix then. Mm-hmm. And checking 1 2, checking 1 2, check 1 2.
There it is. Okay. Yeah,
ready?
That's better. That's better. Yeah, you were
balls.
You would. Yeah, we're good now. We're good now. You know, it might stay in. I don't know what's going to happen right here on the. You know what? Actually, I was thinking about this earlier. Like every so often, this is fairly KickAss, by the way, podcast. We will sometimes refer to ourselves as the KickAss, and it sounds so fucking cool, but we just don't do it that often. And we need to do it more often because it sounds so fucking cool.
You know what kind of person needs to tell themselves that the thing they just said sounds cool? I'm picturing like Tony Stark or Patrick Bateman, and it's one of those two.
That's so hyper specific and so accurate at the same time.
Are we gonna talk about Huey Lewis in the news tonight, or?
God.
I feel like we have to now, right?
I mean, they might come up. Maybe just the news minus Huey. That's a possibility. But anyway, it's the KickAss. And we're here. Jay, Dan, Zach, your KickAss stewards. We are going to navigate this ship into uncharted waters as we always do on our Vibes episodes. We've done a few of these in the past, and to both of your points, I think you both met the assignment perfectly in the sense that there is no assignment. Yeah. We have a topic, and the conversation goes where it goes, and it might be a 10-minute episode, it might be a 4-hour episode. You know, who can say?
It's not going to be a 4-hour episode.
I mean, I know one person to say about that upper end, definitely.
Yeah. I felt like the temperature in the room increased by like 30 degrees when I said that. Rightfully so. But today's topic of vibing is going to be greatness versus popularity. Two categorizations of music that all of us can kind of almost subconsciously figure out where a certain song stands, if they stand in either of those categories at all. But I don't know that I've ever really thought of the intricacies behind that, you know, like why we make those determinations, what makes a song great, what makes a song popular, what makes a song potentially both. And we're going to get into that. We're certainly going to share some examples we feel that fit into the conversation. We have a few topics, a few bullet points that will kind of get the conversation flowing from A to Z, and we'll see where it takes us.
Yeah, I have a few thoughts that I've jotted down here, and I don't know if they're going to apply to whatever this conversation turns into. So we'll see where it goes.
We'll see where it goes. I think where it goes first is just the very definitions of greatness and popularity. And, you know, we're not going to do like the whole dictionary thing here, but, you know, from your standpoints, is this roughly objectivity versus subjectivity, or is there more nuance to, you know, looking at a song and saying this is great and looking at another song and saying this is popular, and figuring out kind of where the juxtaposition of those two things intersect?
I have thoughts. So like I do have like two different mindsets on that too. Cause like you made, like when you're listening to a song, you made this comment, like you're listening to it and you say, oh, this is great. But when I think of, you know, the word greatness, I think of how that particular item that you're discussing is going to be remembered, right? Not like it can be great in the moment, but is it great?
So thinking of a song 10 years later versus thinking of a song 2 days later.
Yeah.
one of those measures.
Yeah. And like, because otherwise there's a lot of great songs. There's a lot of great artists. There's a lot of wonderful artists, in my estimation, who will turn out to not be great.
Mm.
And I, one of the notes that I wrote down here is there's like sort of a central tension when you're thinking about the, like somebody's greatness or specifically when you're talking about an artist's greatness, not necessarily a specific song, but like there's the three categories essentially of a great artist. And that would be like the inventor, like somebody who actually creates a sound or a style or an attitude or a technique. You know, and we think of, there's lots of those, right? Like we know some of the most iconic ones would be like Jimi Hendrix, right? Like he created a thing out of nothing. And then there's like the person who is the interpreter, right? Somebody who makes it legible, right? Like somebody who makes it so that it's accessible to people. And then there would be the icon, you know, the person whose image or timing or business support or cultural emphasis or fit, that's who history remembers. And I was talking about it with my kid just a little while ago, that he didn't understand what I was talking about. So I had to come up with an example. And my example of that for him was historically the biggest example would be Elvis, right?
The icon specifically?
Specifically the icon and also the interpreter.
Yeah, for sure.
For a lot of different reasons, and I don't want to go into some of them because that's not the point of this podcast at the moment.
Right.
Though I'm on that side specifically. But anyway, he didn't write Hound Dog. He didn't write That's All Right. Those early hits that really kind of jump-started his career. But he's the one that made it accessible, legible to the masses. And he also is the one that is remembered for doing it. Big Mama Thornton is a footnote. Maybe a little more than that, and Arthur Crudup is the definition of a footnote. Like he's the guy that wrote That's All Right, but nobody knows who he is.
Right.
Unless you watched that thing on PBS a few years ago.
And I think you touched on, and Dan, I know that you had kind of spoken on this and when we were kind of conceptualizing this idea of the songs and the contrast between the two, having something that is great or someone that is great, but would never be popular. You know, maybe Arthur Crudup is a good example of that. Obviously a fantastic songwriter, at least for that specific song, but someone that has zero popularity in the grand scheme.
And you can fill that list with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of names that you would consider great songwriters, great musicians, great artists, but for one reason or another didn't translate into popularity. So while you may have done an artistic achievement thing, you didn't do the shiny thing that was, you know, they got fire for a moment. And that feels like more so in music is the upfront thing, but like it goes all the way through history with artists and poets, authors, poets. You know, there is a reason that they always say something about the artistic that they don't appreciate you until you're dead.
True.
So there is that, but there's also it's kind of like trying to nail Jello to the wall and actually to figure out how to define this contrast, because first and foremost, and this part's easy to agree on, I believe, is that we're not going to come up with the same definition of great. I don't think anyone's going to come up with the same definition of great, aside from a few specific examples. But then those specific examples also then translate onto that popular side of this argument. And I would even be willing to say that not everyone is going to agree to what defines a popular song or popular artist, because it also does take into that overall taste for the individual and among the community that they happen to find themselves in.
Yeah,
for sure.
So there's a lot at play in that whole thing here.
And I think that's what makes an argument so interesting, that not argument, but makes the discussion so interesting, that there are so many ways to interpret it. And there are very few absolutes in the conversation of greatness or in the conversation of popularity. You know, it's like an eye test sort of thing. Like, you know, a popular artist or a great artist or song when you see it, but like quantifying that is so challenging.
Well, and you guys brought up the perfect example just a few minutes ago, is that for how long, especially in our childhood, were we taught that the king of rock and roll, the singular pinnacle, the absolute icon is Elvis Presley, and then you actually read about it, like, no, he's a song thief. He just whitewashed things that were already good and made it okay to be translucent and like this music.
And we can go into the history and stuff there too. I don't know a lot about that, truthfully. I did study it a little bit, but not a ton. And whether you want to place the blame squarely on Elvis is one thing. I think the Colonel had an awful lot to do with that.
Certainly.
Fair.
I was lucky enough to grow up in a household where my dad loved Elvis, but he loved Chuck Berry. So I grew up with the actual king of rock and roll.
Again,
real talk.
And there is the contrast, is where you can actually point to and go, this, you can literally put the flag and go, this is the origination point. He's the first one to do X. Nobody did this before he did.
Yeah. And that's that inventor route, right? Like you've got
right.
Chuck Berry, you've got Link Ray is another one that you don't have to love Link Ray. The music's nearly unlistenable, some of it, but like Rumble is the first, it's credited as being the first thing that used power chords, and literally everything that came after it uses power chords. So, you know, there's that. It's innovation without superstardom. Right. Like, he didn't have the superstardom, but he's the musician's musician, right? Like, that's who Jimmy Page looks at. And actually that whole documentary, that G3, whatever that was Jimmy Page and Jack White and The Edge, because those are the three guitarists you think of when you think guitarists, that they, all three of them mentioned Link Ray as an influence to them. So he like the musician's musician, but if you're not in that world, you don't care.
You bring up another point, though, and in this case, I wonder if there's a certain social contract that actually sits out that way, because I think everybody knows Rumble, even if they don't know that they know Rumble. They know Rumble. But most people couldn't pick or pinpoint that that's Link Ray and why that is such a tremendous record and what he did. But I think there's an agreement to a certain level on some things where you're like, I know this is a unique and legendary talent, even if their music isn't something that I would say is popular or good to me.
For sure.
Which, and that's a thing too. Like, so we've got like good and great, like there's a little bit of subjectiveness to that, which actually there's a lot of, that's all it is subjectiveness. But then there's the great, which I think has to have some sort of guideline of objective. We do have that with popular, with the idea of popular. There is an objective way to look at that. Even it's not specific, and the bar does keep moving. But as we move forward with like the Billboard charts and stuff like that, like you're even taking into account streaming services and TikTok and all that has helped make popular music chart. So there is a guideline for what is popular.
And that's at least more quantifiable than, I mean, I guess when you look at greatness, maybe like the quantification there is like accolades, you know, I guess that translates to awards, you know, and it's not to say this person has 12 Grammys, this person has 10 Grammys, so 12 Grammys is greater than 10. But, you know, in the absence of any other metric, it is, you know, on top of other awards shows too, like the Brits, the Mercurys, the Junos, what have you. That's something. It's some this metric that we can, you know, compare and contrast against.
It is. And here's the problem with that. I generally and genuinely find that they're ass.
Mm-hmm.
That backs that whole thing up, because as you're having that argument, and I go, in my brain relates, that's a very sports-based argument that we can go to. So-and-so has 4 shiny things on his shelf, and so-and-so B has 2 shiny things on his shelf, and therefore so-and-so A is better than so-and-so B because more shiny. And that's not always the case. And I think that's the same thing with popularity. We also have to put together that a very simple formula that popularity does not equal quality, no matter what. I mean, look, everyone is okay. I don't know if everyone is, but it was quite popular for a hot minute in 2022. And Young Gravy put out that song Betty, and it's a guilty pleasure. The song is dog shit. It was popular, but it's awful. It's legitimately terrible. But unfortunately, it's terrible in an enjoyable way. So therefore, people latched onto it, unironically.
Yeah.
And I have to say unironically because this is also a man who put out a song, One Thought, Two Thought, Red Thought, Blue Thought. So
For fuck's sake.
Did he get sued for that?
no, I don't know. Hopefully, though. All I can say is popular doesn't always mean good. And sometimes that also gets substituted or, where the way it doesn't need to or should not be, which puts another level on this onion, another layer, if you will. I've made a lot of Shrek references over the last 2 or 3 days. I don't know what the hell is with me. I haven't seen that movie in years.
Shrek 5 trailer just dropped today.
Just haven't seen it. Don't know.
Yeah.
Don't know if that's why that is.
So I have a question to pose because I wrote this sort of little blurb of a paragraph, and I don't know why I wrote it, but it was what I was thinking as I was going through this. The idea of popularity as a skill. And that is, again, we'll start with going back to Elvis, right? So he didn't invent rock and roll, but he had the timing, the charisma, the sexuality, the voice, the danger, and the mass cultural readability. Christina Aguilera didn't write beautiful, but she made millions of people believe it. Britney Spears did not create the Max Martin machine, but she embodied it so perfectly that the machine became mythology.
Yeah.
So you've got this greatness can live in the writer, in the performer, in the producer, in the band, in the studio, or the culture around the song. So the better question might be, who deserves it more?
Between all those entities?
Well, not those specific entities, but like is the greatness, should it be more attributed to the author, the performer, I don't know, the producer? I mean, we've given a lot of credit to Max Martin over the last few years. I don't know. Like, does Linda Perry belong in this conversation as a songwriter?
I will say this, and this, I don't know if this is a hot take or not. It feels like maybe it is, but it's going to sound so shitty because it's not meant to be denigrating at all to the performer, but naturally the performer is the person there. You know, you have an issue with your internet service. You call your ISP up and you're talking to, the person who just happens to be the person, that answers the phone. That person is the representative of the ISP in your mind for that specific part of, point in time. And the performer is basically that same person for the song. But there are so many people, and arguably too many people in a lot of cases, that go into, a song, an album, a music career. And, I think there is an argument to be made there that those people typically don't get the popularity bump of things. Maybe they are acknowledged for the greatness side of things, but certainly not for the popularity side of things. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, that's a really interesting point, is that it's not, I think when we first started talking about this, my first thought was, oh, okay, this song is performed by this artist or this group or this individual. And I looked at it through that lens and didn't think about, do we consider the AR exec who signed the artist in the first place? I would like to not, if I can help it.
It's a skill set.
But everyone else.
It's a skill set, recognizing what's going to sell. There's nothing wrong with that.
It is. I hate it, but it certainly is. It's a part of the whole machine.
It's a very interesting conversation. And it also, by the way, is definitely matters on how you frame this. Because the things that you just described were what I initially thought when you started to introduce it. I was like, oh, the boy band system. There was a formula. Someone figured out a formula, figured out what he needed, the ingredients you needed to put that together. Here's the people who delivered. But is the group the successful one? Is the producer the successful one? Is the originator of the system the successful one? Which brings me to a contradiction, because then you turn around and go, but there is an example of a system that we absolutely hold up as a great system.
Motown.
Holland Dozier Holland, exactly. the greatness that we attribute to the Motown sound doesn't happen without those three.
Yep.
Is Britney Spears a great artist, or has she been handed great material by the right people who know what fits her best and what's going to be popular?
And I think when you say it like that, I think that's when it lands for me. Like the material that fits for her. You could not give the three. Well, you can give us the three of us anything. Let's be realistic.
Touche.
You know, you couldn't have given. You know, I'm trying to think of an example like NSYNC. You couldn't have given NSYNC "Baby One More Time." You know, there are obvious reasons, of course, that would not have worked, but, you know, you couldn't have given them Sometimes or, you know, Every Time or whatever other Britney Spears song you can think of from the time. Like those were catered to the artist. So there is something to be said about that calculus that says this song plus this artist equals gold.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of a shared sort of credit to be given across all parties involved.
Okay.
And I think to the same end, to continue this horrible metaphor that I have gone through outside of the circles of the music circles, most people do not know the behind the scenes on those type of artists. So no, I don't know if Max Martin is as much of a household name as Britney Spears is, clearly. For this, still on that same line, like, great. How many non-sports people know the name of the general manager that put their championship team together? To use a completely exact example, Zach and I are both high in the hockey world. Zach, who's the GM at Carolina? Exactly.
Is it Don Waddle?
Don Waddle? No, he's Don Waddle's my GM. Don Waddle's in Columbus.
Oh, see, I feel like I'm fairly connected, and I didn't even know that this dude was with a different team.
He may have been, though. So that, but then that draws another question: is the guy in charge the one that actually built the product, or did he did he just continue? I didn't expect to draw so deep a parallel in these two systems, but there is a lot to be said about that when it comes to the system. And unfortunately, we also find ourselves, I think if we go through these whole things, more often than not, the system tips to the popular side, and that individual great artist necessarily doesn't, whilst still maintaining artistic achievables.
Yeah. This is tangential maybe, but I was thinking about it while you were talking, so it might fit. A few years back, Billy Corgan did an interview. I think maybe it was more recent than that. Did an interview where he talked about in the late 90s through the early 2000s that the attempt by the music industry to manipulate what is popular was intentional, right? Like, so the idea of, you know, early 90s, all throughout like the 70s and 80s, but then specifically in the early 90s, there was a definite shift, and punk rock became less controversial and hip hop started getting more controversial. But then Nelly happened, and ain't nothing wrong with Nelly. I have no problem with Nelly, but you can't deny that what became popular was no longer pushing the envelope, cultural values, cultural norms. So it's tangential, but the idea of what is popular can be manipulated. Can what is great also be manipulated?
Ooh. I don't think it's as easy necessarily for that to be manipulated. Although I say that and I immediately contradict myself, and it is one example, but it's still an example that I thought was interesting, and that was it was a Rolling Stone article of the 500 greatest songs of all time, of forever. Mm-hmm. The list was put out, I think the first time in 2004, was put out again, you know, completely revamped in 2021, and the difference between just those less than 20 years, 17 years or whatever it was, there were more than half of the songs on the more recent version of the top 500 were not on the top 500 20 years ago. Perhaps some of those would have been, certainly some of those would have been from that, 17-year span, but I don't think all of them would have. So, has the goalpost of what those individuals considered great shifted over that period of time? And has that shifted over, the years and decades that since popular music has even, or great music has even existed?
Yeah, I think that, well, not only, I think that you both pointed out great examples of that cultural shift in what has taken place over the years, obviously, because we would put greatness 50 years ago in a way different spot than we would now because of the way that music itself has evolved. But not necessarily always, just to make your further point, while the vast majority of songs on that list changed in those 11 years since they did the third and fourth revisions. The original list, like a Rolling Stone, topped it. In 2021, it fell to fourth. Originally, I Can't Get No Satisfaction was 2. It fell out of the top 10 in that. Imagine was 3. It fell out of the top 10. What's Going On was 4. It dropped to 6. Respect was 5. It rose to number 1. Sam Cooke wasn't in the top 10 in the original. He got out to number 3. Fight the Power was nowhere near the top 10. It's number 2 now. And Hey Ya comes in at number 10. Let's go.
That was the shock for me in the top 10, honestly.
But the Beach Boys fall out. Chuck Berry falls out. Ray Charles falls out. So there's an agreement that there are certain things that are timeless when it comes to this greatness argument, but also it's just as easy to say that some of these things that we've thought of as greatness for so long either diminish because they haven't maintained enough popularity to stay in the cultural zeitgeist, or we look at it and go, well, maybe that wasn't. I mean, don't forget Afternoon Delight won a couple of Grammys too, and then we go look back at that and go, yeah, that was something that we need to hold up. As, as
here's the thing though. It won Best New Artist in what, 78?
78, 79, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And they beat out Elvis Costello. So who is inarguably one of the coolest musicians that has existed, earlier work at least. But I would argue too that, while you may not know the Starland Vocal Band, most everybody knows that song. I think I would attribute greatness to Elvis Costello. I wouldn't attribute greatness to the Starland Vocal Band.
Right. No.
Aside from squeezing in songs about handies onto the pop radio, that's pretty genius. I ain't mad at it. But the fact of the matter is there too, that song has been way more popular than anything Elvis Costello ever released.
Sadly, probably.
And more in the zeitgeist for longer.
Also, sadly, probably.
Again.
But also there's that other level of that. Is it in the zeitgeist still because people remember it fondly, even if it wasn't very good, or is it on the zeitgeist because we spent 50 years ripping it to shreds?
If I remember right, didn't Jeremy Piven use that as a torture song in the PCU movie?
Sounds about right. About right. And it was also mistaken for an innocent song in Arrested Development.
Yeah.
And then used precisely for its proper context in Anchorman. So,
Yeah. History is a terrible accountant. Man, it's just...
That's an understatement. And I'm sure if we have the same conversation 20 years into the future, we'll have even more similar examples of that to share with current artists of the day.
That's the interesting thing. And I think we touch on this quite a bit, especially when we're doing these year-end reviews or our Billboard re-racks, especially our more recent stuff. It's taking a look at these and go, is anyone actually going to remember this song 10 years from now? Or are they like us going to have to go, I'm going to look that up. I'll listen to that. I don't know if I actually heard that or not. And that's, I guess, the ultimate test of whether or not you met at least that popularity thing enough to even be in that other conversation is, does anyone remember your song?
Yeah, I do think there are entire Billboard charts that we've done that I think people will inevitably forget. 2012. I mean, there's going to be certain years that are just, they fall off completely.
Totally. Yeah, it's interesting just thinking, you know, we've done some that are certainly older and, you know, things from the 80s, even things from like the early 90s, like being as young as we were, as young as I was, like there are a lot of songs that got radio airplay that I just didn't remember existing and have since fallen into obscurity. But like you said, 2012 is a great example. That was, I mean, it was 15 years ago. It's a fairly long time, but we were still adult music listening age. And how many of those tracks were just like, what?
Right.
What is this? I've never heard this. And also, like, I don't want to ever hear this again, but that's a different story altogether.
And there's always going to be that age-old argument between the youngs and the olds. Like, your music will never get, you know, remembered because it's so disposable and blah, blah, blah. And they said that about the Beatles. So, you know.
Well, they did. But I also think that's a good litmus test, too, for like you talk about like the difference between 2004 and 2021. And I would say the difference is there's different people working there. Like you have a whole new group of people. So to me, that says more about the greatness of some of those artists, the ones that stayed more so, or like Aretha Franklin getting bumped up, right? So it says something about, you know, you have a whole new generation of individuals that have decided that Aretha Franklin and Otis Redding are worth keeping around. Like this is the great. Yeah, we're going to throw Outkast in there as well because we see greatness here too. But it won't be for that group to decide that. It'll be for the next group to decide that, or the one after that even. Because that's, to me, like there's got to be some sort of staying power to recognize greatness.
There has to be. That's where, you know, I think I talked early in the episode just about like quantifiability. Like that can't be quantified. That is simply like you look at Aretha Franklin, you look at the song Respect, and you know this is a great song. You don't have to do any number crunching. You don't have to think, but why is it great? What about this category? Like you know that it's a great song.
Yeah.
And obviously a great artist too.
Yeah.
But you know, we see these songs that are older now that perhaps our older family members would have listened to, you know, when they were of our age or younger. Yeah. I don't think that speaks as much to popularity for sure as it speaks to greatness, because popularity is fleeting, but greatness doesn't necessarily fade unless it was never really as strong as it was in the first place.
Yeah. And that's where like we talk about how I'm the odd man out in a lot of these things with what I consider great. And like y'all loved Whitney Houston and the I Will Always Love You thing. And I can't stand that song. But anyway, I have a similar thing where like my hot take is that John Lennon was not the greatest of the Beatles. And then he often gets lauded as and I would argue that maybe the main reason that is because his life was cut short so soon, and there's the grandiose atmosphere that comes around that. But I've always been a McCartney fan in that regard. But I wonder if, as you pointed out in that same list, now it's Rolling Stone, and you can make an argument one way or the other whether that's the right list to be using. But that generational thing you said, Imagine, falls down. I would disagree with that as a song, but if the artistry in that song is what's taking a step down, I don't know that I could disagree with that. And that's a tough thing to see as a Gen X kid. Like, I don't know. That's a hard thing to see, but I don't know that I disagree with it.
Do you think that it's the not the climate, but the culture itself that is shifting, that is causing those tracks to shift in the way that they're being seen by folks at large? Or do you think it is just the law of diminishing returns after such a long period of time?
I think it could be that, but I think that's one of those things too, that like saturation, if the song is truly great, won't hurt it. And that's where like you see like songs like Respect, that song hasn't spent more than a few hours off the air in 60 years or however long it's been. I can't remember what year it was released. 50 years anyway. Right.
Yeah. 67.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
So it hasn't been off the air for more than a few hours in that amount of time. And it's still ranking number one on that list, or now currently whatever, they bumped it up to that. Whereas some of the other tracks get bumped down as they are equally saturated in the airwaves. So I don't know. I certainly am not the one to be the keeper of somebody else's listening, although we've sort of,
It's sort of our brand, like
yeah,
a
that's
quarter
our
of
brand.
shows. So
Forget the thing I just said.
yeah, no.
Listen to me.
Producer Nikki, we're going to need you to cut those last 10 seconds. Thank you.
And we'll have him for the proper amount of electroshock therapy by like Thursday afternoon, if that works for you.
New Riff whiskey. It'll do a body good.
I know that we've kind of talked about a specific song in this same, in exactly what you said, Jay, probably more often than any other song, and that's Stairway to Heaven. And I feel like we're not the only ones who have seen this being considered as one of the, not just the greatest rock songs, but one of the greatest songs of all time, and have seen that lessen over the years. And it's just from a real quick glance at this list, so I may have missed it, but I can't find it at all in the top 500 on that. Again, one publication, one list, but I think that's still very telling.
It has to be there.
I don't have it pulled up, but
it has to be there.
I have to be missing it somewhere. Yeah.
As we all suddenly try to dive
I'm not
in
even
and find
trying.
the most recent edition of that. It's interesting, though. Stairway is number 61
I did miss it.
in the 2021 edition. And as I say, to compare it to the 2004?
I would make a couple of arguments here, too. Not about its placement on the ranking. That's not really 31. Okay, so it dropped by half.
That's still a big drop.
It doubled its place. I would make an argument here that this particular conversation is not about rankings of songs, right? Like we want to talk about like what the greatness is. And that's one of those scenarios where I would consider the song great and the artist less so. I love Led Zeppelin. Don't get me wrong. But as an artist, they've famously ganked a lot of riffs.
Right.
That being one of them, Stairway being one. It does not lessen the song if it's stolen, because even if that's true and it's stolen, it doesn't take away from the fact that it's a cool song.
I would argue that it does to an extent, though, because it's not. It gets back to the attribution conversation of who is responsible for that song. At that point, is it truly Led Zeppelin's handiwork that caused Stairway to Heaven to be what it was?
No,
I would say levee breaks or whatever.
Well, I would say that their embodiment of the song is what helped make it popular, but I don't think it lessens the song itself, because like that would make the argument. Okay, so what was it? Good Vibrations, where the Beach Boys got sued by Chuck Berry because it's his song.
Right.
Was it that one? I don't remember.
I believed it.
Maybe it's not Good Vibrations. No, it's not Good Vibrations. What is it? It doesn't matter. But now I can't get it out of my head. Anyway, there's a Beach Boys song where Chuck Berry winds up being credited on it as one of the Beach Boys, because they basically took his music and put different lyrics over it, and doesn't make the song any less good. It's still a bitchin' song.
Surfing
USA.
USA.
Looks like it was Surfing USA.
Surfing USA. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and maybe that was less about the song being worse or better, and more so Led Zeppelin themselves. In this specific example, Led Zeppelin themselves or the Beach Boys or whoever being the ones that are the faces of that song.
And that's possible.
But it's an interesting argument, again, to think about, that there's more than just the performer that goes into any track. I'm talking more to myself than I am to anyone else. Like, that's something that I know that I need to keep in mind a little bit more. And when listening to these songs, especially ones that I really love or ones I really think are great, like this goes far beyond just the artist involved.
I had a whole other like tangential thing that I was thinking about here too.
Yeah, go for it.
If we're cool with shunting to the side just a little bit, because we have been focused on the idea of popularity as like something that Rolling Stone is going to pick up on, right? But what about Stephen Malkmus and Elliott Smith and Jim Schmerzel and Wayne Coyne? Like there's a different, or Black Alicious, or we could go on, right? DJ Shadow. I wrote a thing down, and I'm not sure if it's a term that already exists. I kind of hope it's not, because I'd like to take credit for it, but don't think that's possible. And that is the idea of alternative canonization, which, so we have this whole thing where we talked about the musicians, right?
Sure.
And, you know, we have this whole world of music that sits underneath something that's not really ever going to make any of those lists. I brought up Stephen Malkmus, like, dude essentially became the Grammar of the 90s indies rock scene, but was never going to be a mainstream superstar. It's too smirky, tongue in cheek, sometimes literal nonsense. And that gets even further when you talk about like Robert Pollard or Flying Nuns kind of stuff. Like there's a lot of stuff going on there but it is considered to be like, that's the canonization. Like that is like, if you talked to, I don't know, Josh Homme or Dave Grohl, they would say that Steve Malkmus is one of their influences.
For sure.
It sort of kind of hurts what I mentioned earlier about the community standards also playing a part when it comes to popularity.
Yeah.
Right? Like there is a sort of, it might actually kind of fit in an actually a Catholic term, equipolant canonization.
Okay.
It's essentially an alternative route to the same point, which it sounds that is where we're headed here, basically. But yeah, like you said, like this is going to be a saint to a certain number of people who are in the know, right? Mm-hmm. Popular amongst a certain group of people that share the knowledge and for whatever reason. That's not to say it's wrong. It's just a different take on that popularity trait and where they may intersect for some, but not for others. And it may also be that as we referred to earlier, that I get that there's greatness to this artist or to this person's work or to this particular work, but it ain't for me. I can respect it without enjoying it type deal.
Gotcha.
Right. And more so today and, you know, of the last 10, 15 years than ever before, like luck plays such a pivotal role in current artists' popularity. You know, having the right person recognize and note your stuff, having the right person stumble on it. And, you know, obviously social media is a huge vehicle for that nowadays. This luck certainly has always played a factor in that. You know, there are always going to be artists that, you know, that all of us know and love, you know, the three of us and listeners that are never going to be seen as popular, never going to be, you know, experienced and loved the way that we would want them to by millions and millions of people. And it's interesting to see the ones who do get on, you know, and just how much just fortune falls into, and not taking anything away from these artists at all, but, you know, comparing like to like, yeah, there is a huge luck factor, you know, more so now maybe than ever before.
Because to be degree, there's a huge list of artists that belong in that great category, but also succumb to the description, have spent their entire careers being this close to making it for one reason or another, just for whatever that breakthrough just didn't come.
Yeah. And I guess like that's like you use the phrase making it. And I guess like I have not a completely different definition of what that means, but I think I have my different definition of what making it means because of these artists that aren't quite there. Right. Like, I mean, we've talked a little bit and joked about, you know, how I made one, whether it was, you know, ill-advised or not, one push to try to be a rock star, right? Like I made that push. And my definition of making it was on, let's say, I think 25 radio stations in the country, maybe it was even 50 radio stations in the country. A song that I was the vocalist on was beating on those local charts, was beating Ozzy and was beating Five Finger Death Punch. It was temporary. It was brief. And I definitely never got anything out of it beyond the satisfaction of knowing I did that. But I wouldn't say that's making it, but I can see how having a lower level of success and just even like, I don't know, getting like college radio play feels like, and for some of these people, that's all they needed, right? Like Elliott Smith was never famous. He is now.
Yeah.
Right.
and whether or not he deserves to be the face of, Wounded. I don't know. Wounded is the only word I had in my head for how to describe his music. But I don't know, like the indie sadness or whatever. Like why is it him and not Vic Chestnut or Jason Molina or I don't know, Kristen Hirsch? And it's probably because none of you can't put them on a poster. None of them. Like that might be part of it. But I don't know. I don't know. I'm rambling because I don't really have any notes to talk about right now.
But the perspective is really cool to hear you say that and hear you kind of share that perspective on it that like, someone like me would never be able to really enter the conversation from that direction of just us sitting here thinking like popularity versus greatness and kind of prattling on about it as we have for 50 plus minutes now. But like, that's a really interesting perspective. Like, how does the artist feel about those categories, and does the artist care about, I mean, certainly popularity equals money, and that's always going to be more often than not a driving factor because it has to be, not because of any sort of like greed or anything like that. But beyond that, like I do wonder, it's cool to hear that is kind of the yardstick that you've kind of measured your own success by. That's really cool.
Yeah, I think a lot of the artists I listen to would fall into that category of not caring about the popularity. Like going back as far as like Jesus Lizard, I don't think David Yao gave any kind of a shit about whether or not he was popular. He was going to do what he was going to do.
Yeah. I can 100% see that.
The perfect example, I think.
Oh gosh.
Whereas somebody else who was probably going to do whatever they were going to do, but the popularity helped would be like a Mark Mothersbaugh or something in like the Devo, whatever.
Sure.
Which is an interesting example to go to because that popularity was there for, compared to the length of their career, a very small part of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
However, his work had shined through in everything he's done since.
Yo, Gabba Gabba.
That's what I'm saying. So now again, there's the problem with the topic like this is there's no way to draw a line under almost anything because we could always come up with an example of, well, yeah, but he did it this way and it's just as good, but not popular. But there's also this guy who had different motivations and worked just as hard. But there's this guy who didn't really deserve it, but he got there's not I don't know if there's a way to even sum this up. Is what I'm trying to say.
Something along the lines of like the mainstream popularity turns people into stars and like the underground turns people into reference points, and both can be unfair.
Very much so.
Yeah, it's not bad at all. Yep.
And both can be limiting too.
Yeah.
Very
that
much
might be
so.
the whole piece here. That might be everything.
Yeah, I think we nailed it. I think we got the whole conversation. And maybe we can cut this if y'all aren't up for it, but I've got one quick lead out if y'all are up for it. Just a quick one question, one answer sort of deal like we try to do at the end of these Vibes episodes, albeit accidentally because I just now realized we kind of done it for everyone so far. Who is the more recent artist of today that we are going to be talking about as objectively great in 20 years?
Ooh, that's a really good end question. And Nikki's going to have to cut some dead space.
A lot of it, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely put you on the spot. No. And myself, because I don't think I had this question. I had a different question written. I reworded it a little bit because I think this sounds a little better.
Well, I guess, I mean, it kind of like, I have to caveat this by saying, like, what do you mean by artist of today? Because my instant gut reaction is that I think we're going to remember Sleep Token as somebody who was great.
Oh, interesting.
I think we're going to remember Juice WRLD as somebody who was great.
That's even more interesting, to be totally honest.
Right. So, like, but I don't know that that's true. And then there's the other level where I think, if we're talking specifically, I think an artist like Maynard James Keenan, who is already probably considered great by a large number of people, his career is already 30 plus years and counting.
Oh God, it is.
Yeah. But that's not just one project. It's many, many projects. And I think like we're going to remember him in 20 years. It's going to look more like a quilt of where his fingers have been. That's a weird, I'm going to take that back. Roll that back.
He might appreciate it. I don't know.
But you see what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
I think we're good. Like he's already considered great for his work in Tool and maybe even in Perfect Circle. But I think we're going to look back and remember him as great for a number of different reasons. And I don't think we quite know what that greatness looks like yet. Exactly.
So you think he hasn't hit his ceiling?
No, and it's because every
agree,
project is a
100%.
little bit different too. Like Pucifer is completely different than Perfect Circle, which is different than Tool, which is like I think there's not any one thing. But I don't know. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a really good answer of speaking of an artist who's been around for a while and whose greatness is going to increase, and then artists that have not been around as long but are going to achieve, that category of greatness as their careers go on. It's really kind of two similar trajectories for sure.
Yeah, like I want to hear Maynard James Keenan in his Leonard Cohen years.
Oh my God.
Right? Like I'm waiting for that.
That will be a treat for all of us. Dan, what about you? Same question.
Maybe a little more recent, but I also have a caveat that probably puts it into a very similar answer from a different perspective. And it will be, I think, The Weeknd.
Okay.
Now, the caveat is what the next evolution of the man is as an artist, because apparently The Weeknd character is now done, and he will be back with, or intends to be back with, a new look, a new feel, whatever that may be, as a different perspective on his career. But I think as a vocalist, he's one of those people that definitely fits both of those categories. We would say he is a great vocalist and definitely hits the popularity. Where he takes it from here, as I said, what the next project is, whether he does flash and proves to be a generational songwriter or not, or a songwriter of a moment, and that doesn't necessarily, maybe that doesn't hold up in that greatness side. But I think that'll be the major thing, is once he's done evolving, we may look back and go, yeah, okay, he fit the bill for both of these things that we were talking about.
Yeah, that's such a good one, because there's so much intrigue of, like, just like Maynard James Keenan, like how many different projects, how many different tendrils are going to come off of this artist, this singular entity. Like I don't think we know the half of it yet.
Yeah, and I think it's weird that we kind of both, I'm sure we both thought it in the moment, but we both kind of avoided saying Kendrick because we've been talking about him a lot recently.
I'll dip a toe in. And
I was just going to ask, did you have somebody specific in mind when you thought of that question?
Not when I thought of it, but as I was hearing both of you talk, Kendrick was the name, honestly, that came to mind, especially with you talking about Tool and A Perfect Circle and just all of the different acts. Like it certainly is difficult in the hip hop space to have multiple different acts or multiple different, groups or what have you. But I do think that is a good example, just like with Maynard James. Like that is someone who I think we are going to look back at Kendrick Lamar's career, and we are not going to, I don't think it's going to be a discussion point of whether he's the best hip hop artist of all time. I think the discussion is going to be whether he's the best artist of all time. I really do.
Wow.
And I think that there's going to be an argument made there. I think we're going to, over time, as we are appreciating this in the moment, we're appreciating the hell out of it in the moment. 20, 30, 40 years from now, I think he is looked at as number one on that same mountain, pushing the folks like, Jay and Pac and Big down a notch as a result. I don't think he has yet, but I certainly think that's the direction that he goes. That greatness certainly increases over time for him instead of decreasing.
I would say he's already in that conversation.
For of best hip hop artist ever. Yeah. 100%. 100%.
Wow.
But
those are fun takes, guys.
This was a really great episode. Yeah. Awesome awesome concept. Dan, I think you were the one who came up with it originally, so kudos to you for that.
Okay. I sure. I'll take your word for it that I did.
I don't think these concepts ever are pitched by any one of us. I think they just materialize out of thin air.
Right.
They just kind of happen.
They just kind of happen. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, certainly lots more discussion that we could have. You know, I feel like we went about an hour on this topic. I feel like we could talk a full calendar year about this particular topic with different pieces and parts of the puzzle, different artists that we can discuss more at length. But listeners, that's where y'all come in. So where would you take this discussion at this point? Are there specific artists that you think have a level of greatness that just hasn't been acknowledged where it should be? Do you think there are some artists that light is going to diminish over time? Yeah, let us know where you stand on this conversation, or if you have any other interesting tangents that y'all can think of to add to the discussion. Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, of course, at Fairly KickAss on all of those. fairlyKickAss@gmail.com. Email us your thoughts. We'll read email. We're not above reading an email. Come on. Do it. fairlykickass.com, of course. And wherever you get your podcast is where you'll get this one. Check out some of our other Vibes episodes. I think this is maybe like number 4 or 5, but we have several other similar convos. Check those out. Check out all of our other types of episodes and let us know what you think about the whole lot of it. Any parting words for the people on this topic, great or popular or otherwise, before we head off?
I don't know how to add to any of it. Actually, that's not true. I don't know how to add to any of it in brevity. So I'm just going to say Prince.
Prince.